In this video, we are going to talk about parallel and perpendicular lines. So parallel lines are two or more lines that are equidistant from each other and never intersect. Sometimes you can see parallel lines also denoted like this, symbolically. And then we also have something called perpendicular lines, which are two or more lines that intersect at a 90-degree angle. So they're denoted sometimes as this, symbolically. And then we also have another important vocab word, which is reciprocal. And a reciprocal is a number you multiply by an expression to obtain a result of 1. So for a reciprocal, for an example, let's do one down here. An example of a reciprocal, let's say we had the number 1/3, and we wanted to find the reciprocal of 1/3. Well, according to the definition, the reciprocal is whatever number we multiply that expression by to get the result 1. So what would we have to multiply 1/3 by to get the value 1? Well, to do that, we just simply multiply 1/3 by 3. Because what happens is 3 times 1/3, you get 3/3, and 3 divided by 3 is just 1. So that's this idea of the reciprocal. So the reciprocal specifically would be the number 3, because that's the number that we multiplied it by. We multiply this expression 1/3 by to get the value of 1. Alrighty. So let's dive into the graphs of parallel and perpendicular lines. So for our first graph, we have two parallel lines. And I encourage you to pause the video and see what these two parallel lines have in common. I encourage you to find the slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b, of both this line and this line, and compare the two. What do you notice that they have in common when you do so? And assuming you have worked through it, let's go through this together. So for this upper line here, it crosses through the y-axis at 3. So our y-intercept is at the point 0, 3. So we're going to get y equals some slope times x plus the y-intercept, which is 3. Now for our slope, let's figure that out. So we're going to go rise 1, and we're going to run by 2. So, sorry, not run by 2. Right here. So we're going to actually rise 2, my apologies, and go right. So we're going to go up 2, and right 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So our slope is 2/5. Now looking at this bottom line, we have a y-intercept of -2. So we're going to have y equals some slope times x minus 2. And then our slope, well, let's see what that is. We're going to go up 1, up 2, and then right by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we get 2/5 x minus 2. What relationship or what do these two lines have in common? These lines, notice the slope of both these lines are the same. And that is a rule of parallel lines. So what you just discovered is the rule of parallel lines on your own. So parallel lines always have the same slope. That's the big takeaway from this part, is that parallel lines have the same slope. Looking at this graph, we have a graph of two perpendicular lines. And I encourage you to pause the video and see if you can find out or figure out what relationship they have in common. This one's a little bit more tricky to figure out, but I encourage you to pause the video and work through it for a minute. See if you can figure it out. And assuming you have worked through it, let's go through this together. So this line here, we have y equals -4x plus 2 and this side is y equals 1/4 x minus 1. Well, the first thing I notice is that one of our slopes is negative and the other slope is positive. So that's one thing I notice. And I also notice that 1/4 and 4, they are reciprocals of each other. So this is where this vocab word reciprocal becomes very important in this section, because 4 is the reciprocal of 1/4. Because if you multiply 4 by 1/4, you get 1. So we have a positive and negative slope, and both these slopes are reciprocals of each other. So that's the rule of perpendicular lines specifically. So perpendicular lines have slopes that are known as opposite reciprocals. So the term opposite reciprocals, what that means is opposite means that they're different signs. So we have a negative and a positive, opposite slopes. And then they're also reciprocals of each other. So 4 is the reciprocal of 1/4, or 1/4 is the reciprocal of 4. So this is the important rule that you must keep in mind for perpendicular lines. All right. So let's just dive into some examples. So for example, A, we're asked to write an equation that is parallel to the line 1/2 x plus 2. So recall, parallel lines means that we have lines that never intersect and have the same slope. So if we want to get a line that's parallel to 1/2 x, all we need to do is write an equation that has the same slope. So if y equals 1/2 x, and then you can write any y-intercept you want as long as it's not the same y-intercept. So we can do +1, +100, -4, -3, -7, -8, whatever you want. So I'm going to say -8. This is my answer, but I encourage you to write a different answer or multiple answers if you want. As long as it has the same slope and a different y-intercept, it's correct. All right, so looking at example B, we have write an equation that is perpendicular to the line 1/2 x plus 2. Well, recall, perpendicular means that they must have a slope that's opposite and a reciprocal. So since this slope is positive, we're going to need to have some negative slope automatically just by looking at it. So we get y equals negative blank x. Now, our slope must be the reciprocal of what we're given. So to get 1/2 equal to 1, I'm going to do that over here. To get 1/2 equal to 1, I'm going to multiply this by 2. Because what happens is these 2's cancel and you just get 1. So the reciprocal of 1/2 is 2. So we get y equals negative 2x. And then here, we can write any y-intercept we want, just as we did above. So I can write -4, -3, -100, 4, 5, 6, whatever you'd like. And I'm just going to say +10. But you can write whatever you'd like as long as the slope is -2x. That's the important thing. Your slope needs to be -2x, but your y-intercept can be at any point. Alrighty. Example number C, we're asked to write the equation of a line that is parallel to y equals 3x minus 6. And it needs to contain the point -6, 2. Well, recall that parallel lines means that we have the same slope. So we can plug in the given point to y equals the same slope, 3x plus b, because we don't know what b is, because we want to find what the equation of the line is at this point that is parallel to this line. So because it's parallel, we keep the same slope, but to find out what b is, we're going to plug in this point, -6 for x and y for 2, and solve for b to find the y-intercept of the line. So y is 2, so we're going to say 2 equals 3 times x, which is -6, plus b. Where we get 2 equals 3 times -6, that's -18, plus b. To solve for b, I'm going to add 18 on both sides. And we get, I'm going to bring this up here, b equals 20. And now, all we have to do is plug in b for this equation, and that's your answer. So our answer is y equals 3x plus 20. And that's your answer. For example D, I encourage you to pause the video and try this problem on your own just to give it a go. And assuming you work through it, let's go through this together. So we are asked to write an equation that is perpendicular to the line 3x plus y equals 1, and that it contains the point 1, -2. So the first thing I want to do, first step 1, is I'm going to write 3x plus y equals 1 in slope-intercept form. Now, I'm just doing this because we are more familiar with slope-intercept form. So we're going to say 3x plus y equals 1. To get this in slope-intercept form, recall I'm going to solve for y. And to do that, I'm going to subtract 3x on both sides. We get y equals 1 minus 3x. But I'm going to write this as -3x plus 1. And now for step 2, we are going to have to find the slope that would make a line perpendicular to this one. So recall we're going to need to take the opposite values, or the opposite. So we're going to need to have a positive slope here. For second step, we're going to need to find the opposite reciprocal. Of -3. So the opposite value of negative is a positive value. So we're going to have some positive value. And to get 3 equal to 1, we're going to multiply that by 1/3. So the opposite reciprocal is positive 1/3. And now that we got that, we're going to plug in step 3, plug in the point 1, -2 to find the value of b in our new equation that's perpendicular to this one. So we're going to say y equals 1/3 x. Now the 1/3 comes from this here, the opposite reciprocal. So we're going to say y equals 1/3 x plus b. And now we're going to plug in this point into here to find what our value for b is. So we know that y is -2. So we're going to say -2 equals 1/3 times x, and x is 1 plus b. Now, 1/3 times 1, well, that's just 1/3. So we get -2 equals 1/3 plus b. Now to solve for b, I'm just going to subtract 1/3 on both sides. So these cancel, and we get b equals -2 minus 1/3. Now, to subtract these two, we're going to write this -2 over 1 And then to get common denominators, I'm going to multiply this first fraction here, negative 2 over 1, by 3. So then we can get our common denominator of 3. So what we get is b equals 3 times negative 2 is negative 6 over 1 times 3, which is 3, minus 1/3. And now, since we have common denominators, all we have to do is find the difference of our numerators. So negative 6 minus 1, that's going to be negative 7/3. That's our value for b. So our final answer for this problem, or for this example, is y equals 1/3 x minus 7/3. And that's your final answer.